I'm Yvonne Hamoud, registered social worker and owner of New Moon Counseling. But out of the office, I'm a mom, wife, daughter, sister, and friend. Join me each week as I sit with a special guest to discuss everyday things that impact our mental health. We'll be chatting about everything from mental health and relationships to media and current events, as well as personal experiences and reflections, all in the hopes of normalizing our humanness and helping you see that you're not alone. This is Outside the Therapy Room. Hi everyone, welcome back to Outside the Therapy Room. Today we are joined by Sarah. You are our first New Moon Counseling team member on the podcast for season 2.
Yay. That's exciting.
Yeah, how are you doing today?
Good. Loving the weather. It's beautiful
I
outside.
know.
Yeah.
It is nice. Yeah, our topic today is on EMDR, and I know there's a lot of people who may be curious about what EMDR is, maybe wants to do EMDR therapy for themselves, and so I thought it would be a great opportunity for you to kind of share your wisdom on EMDR and, see who may be able to benefit from EMDR.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to share and talk more about this topic. It's something that I am actually really passionate about.
Yeah, my kind of little hook that I wanted to give was kind of like, what if moving your eyes back and forth could help you heal trauma? Because that is kind of what happens with EMDR, but I know there's a lot of different ways to actually practice EMDR that we will get to in this podcast. But can you briefly explain to us what EMDR is to someone who maybe has never heard of it before?
So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. The eye movement piece is a bit of a misnomer because it's actually any bilateral stimulation. So that can look like eye movements, tapping, holding devices that buzz alternatively so that you have bilateral stimulation in some part of your body. EMDR is really helpful at reprocessing traumatic memories that have been stored maladaptively. So oftentimes our memories are stored in our long-term memory, so we can recall something from the past without being triggered by it. Traumatic memories are often stored in our short-term memory, and they activate the amygdala, which can signal our fight or flight processes. And that's why some folks experience flashbacks, nightmares, really dysregulated emotions, panic attacks, things like that.
Mhm.
So, to put it simply, EMDR is a way to reprocess your traumatic memories in ways where you actually don't ever have to talk about what happened. So we really just work off of one target memory. So the likelihood of being re-traumatized is very low, and that's why it's can be so helpful for folks.
Yeah. Yeah. I know while you were working with us here, there was like a big interest on EMDR, but you were also looking at other modalities. What kind of drew you to completing your training in EMDR and having that be a therapy that you use?
I so I have a history working in social services for 15 years, working with marginalized folks, many of which experience trauma.
Mhm.
I've always been really interested in trauma and trauma work, and really focused on, a desire to support folks who are experiencing traumatic memories and the side effects of those memories. So I just thought that EMDR would be a really like evidence based practice to work
Mhm.
with clients. And the thing that I like about it is it's quick, right? Like we reprocess a traumatic memory in one session, so usually about 30 to 40 minutes.
Oh,
And
wow.
once that memory's been reprocessed, it's no longer like the client no longer experiences the negative thoughts, images, memories, emotions, and sensations that are associated with that memory.
Mhm.
So, for example, I'm working with a client who is 63. He had a traumatic event when he was 3 years old. So, for
Mhm.
60 years, this traumatic event has been upsetting him in some way, shape, or form, impacting his life negatively. We were able to reprocess that memory so that it's no longer maladaptive in 35 minutes.
Wow.
So that's the thing that I love about EMDR is that
Mhm.
it's evidence based, it works, and it's very quick, right? Like we
Yeah.
don't have to talk at length about what is going on with you, what happened, because a
Mhm.
lot of people find that really traumatic, right? Like
Yeah.
we
Having to
can re-traumatize.
reshare.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's why I ultimately chose this modality. And every time I have a session, I'm just like, oh, this is just so amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool how we can nerd out and get really excited
Yeah.
about modalities that we
Yeah.
practice with our
Yeah.
clients. Like, I know, like, obviously in our regular day to day, like, we check in a lot with each other about, like, oh my
Yeah.
God, that was an amazing EMDR session, or, I had this breakthrough with my client. So yeah, it's exciting as therapists to kind of get to see that progress for our clients and also see how a
Yeah.
modality is actually helping them and benefiting them
Mhm.
with some of the challenges that they come in with. You kept saying reprocessing. So,
Hmm.
what exactly do you mean by reprocessing? Obviously, it's part of the EMDR acronym. There's
Yeah.
reprocessing there, but can you just describe that to us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea with EMDR is that so we have different memory networks, traumatic memories. So if you have a traumatic event that happens when you're 3, and then another one when you're 5 and 7 and 9, etc.,
Yeah.
those traumatic events often link together in a specific memory network. So
Hmm.
the way that I've kind of explained it to some of my clients is that just picture a highway, and all the cars are traumatic memories that are similar to one another. So
Mm.
when we reprocess, what we're doing is we're taking that car out of the traumatic memory highway, and we're putting it back into an adaptive memory highway. So it's going
Mm.
more from short term into long term.
Yeah.
So like if I'm saying this correctly, going more from being stored in like the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. So
Mm.
our bodies will respond differently to that, like with our central nervous system,
Yeah.
respond differently to that. And that's why when it's reprocessed, it's no longer disturbing clients.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that's a really great way to kind of look at it, like this traumatic highway and all of
Hmm.
our and all of our
Hmm.
kind of memories being stored
Hmm.
in that way. Yeah,
Hmm.
you already kind of touched on this in terms of like talk therapy and EMDR and that being something that kind of drew you to this modality. But you mentioned it like the how quick things can kind of change. And I
Hmm.
practice more talk therapy, and obviously there's like the benefits in traditional talk therapy as well, but you're not wrong. A lot of the times it's warming up to having, a client communicate about their trauma or share exactly like what happened. And that's even if they're ready and prepared to share some of those details that can be really
That's
tough
right.
and often re-traumatizing. And so besides that, what is another difference that you notice between EMDR and traditional talk therapy?
So the other thing is that a lot of times folks will come in to see me with, they want to have EMDR, and a lot of the time they're like, I don't actually remember. I know something happened, but I don't remember, or I have a snippet of a memory, but I don't know what else happened. So what can happen with EMDR, and this happened recently with a client of mine who experienced sexual abuse when she was young. So she had a snippet of a memory, but through EMDR reprocessing, she was able to actually um, see the entire thing, the entire memory that happened.
Mm,
And then because we're reprocessing it, it's no longer traumatic for her.
right.
So the nice thing about EMDR is that we can get the full story if people want the full story, or if they're like, I really want to know what happened to me, or I don't remember, which is different than talk therapy because we're not like activating those parts of the brain to get
Hmm.
those memories out.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I love talk therapy too. I love hearing people's stories, but sometimes I don't
Yeah.
want to share. And sometimes it's they don't remember, or,
Right. Like they
you know,
can't. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why EMDR can be so beneficial.
Yeah, there's a lot, it sounds like, that kind of goes into the process of even just getting to
Yes.
doing EMDR. Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that process? Like,
Mhm.
is it something that you can start right away on a first session with a brand new client, or is it something that you work up to with the client?
So it's definitely not something you start with right away. There is a process to get through. So we work through EMDR history taking, which can take 1 or 2 sessions, and then so we really want to make sure that the client is ready for EMDR. Most of
Hmm.
the time, folks are ready, like we go through a readiness questionnaire. If folks experience dissociation based on complex trauma or traumatic past, we need to work on safety and stabilization first
Mm.
before we can start EMDR. And that's because folks that dissociate have often compartmentalized their traumatic experiences, and the bilateral stimulation can start to erode.
Mm.
Like if we think about our traumatic experience like in boxes, it will start to erode the side of that box. So the traumatic memory comes out without the client having the tools
Right.
to, yeah, to stabilize. Um, and then it can actually lead to suicidal ideation and suicidal
Yeah, like
attempts.
further
So
harm. Yeah.
that's right. So, one thing that's important to do with all clients, no matter how they present, is the dissociative scale. So, to assess for dissociative disorder.
Mm.
And then, if there is one, then we work on safety stabilization first.
And that's
For
through like
folk,
talk therapy kind of
yes.
practice. Yeah.
Yeah. So we, use tools to stabilize emotions,
Hmm.
stabilize dissociation. So practicing being present, using anchoring, grounding, breath work,
Hmm.
meditation, mindfulness, all those things. And then when the client is stable, then we can move forward with the EMDR reprocessing.
Yeah.
So if the client is like good to go, quote unquote, then we work on, so we build a container. And this is a container where they can hold any negative thoughts or images or sensations that happen in between sessions. We
Mm.
also build a calm place. And this is a place that, like in their mind, obviously, they can
Yeah.
go if they're experiencing some dysregulation in between sessions. There are also other stabilization tools that we can use if necessary. And then from there, we would start to look at their 10 most disturbing memories.
Hmm.
We create target memories and target clusters. So we cluster all the similar traumatic memories together. And that's because they all travel down the same highway in the memory network. So we
Hmm.
want to get all the memory network done at the same time. And then from there, we start reprocessing. So it is quite a sequence of
Yeah.
events before we get to the actual reprocessing piece.
Yeah, and I guess it can vary in terms of how many sessions it takes before really getting into the EMDR process.
Yes,
Like it depends on, I'm assuming it depends on like the person's experience or trauma, how they're going through with getting, grounded from a dissociative state.
absolutely. Yeah. So I've met with some clients who wanted the MDR, and they experienced dissociation, and now we're working through some concerns with dissociative identity disorder. So
Mm,
we've moved away from EMDR because it's really important for safety stabilization. So
of course,
for
yeah.
anybody out there that's listening to this, if you're thinking about EMDR therapy and the therapist that you're working with does not assess you for dissociation, please ask for an assessment before you start, because it could actually
Mm,
be pretty dangerous. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So once you go through that, beginning portion of getting prepared for EMDR therapy, what or like I guess can you walk us through what what actually happens in a typical EMDR session?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually very, very simple.
Yeah.
So we choose the target that we're going to work on. So the target memory. I ask you about an image that comes up that relates to this memory. I ask you for a negative cognition that you believe about yourself based on what happened, positive
Mm,
cognition, what you'd like to believe about yourself after the
mm,
memory is reprocessed. Um, and then we assess the validity of the positive cognition and the how distressing the memory feels. And then we do a
right.
little bit of a body scan. And then after that's done, we actually start the reprocessing. So reprocessing looks like, I'd like you to think of the memory, the negative cognition. So I'd like you to think of the memory. I was bullied when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
The negative cognition, I'm not worth it,
Mm,
and go with that. And when I say go with that, you start your tapping.
mm-hmm.
After 24 taps, I say you can stop tapping. What do you notice now? And then you'll start to get a picture, an image, a body sensation related to those things.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me what it is. I say, go with that. You continue tapping.
Yeah.
What do you notice now? Write it down. Go with that. And then, so as the reprocessing goes, usually it's negative, 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 and then it starts to turn into a positive.
Mm,
So you start experiencing positive, or so there's adaptive material that's coming in to this maladaptive memory to
mhm.
help your brain reprocess the memory so that it's no longer harmful.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
So
Yeah.
you
And
mentioned
then
like the bilateral tapping. So like
yes.
again, for folks, you know, Sarah's tapping on each shoulder, kind of taking turns doing that
Yes.
tapping. And you mentioned
Yeah.
sometimes it's with eye movement, sometimes it's with those buzzies on your
Mhm.
hand. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of what somebody is doing. And then you're kind of checking in with them each time. Is
That's
that
right.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then so the idea with EMDR is that there are channels associated with the maladaptive memory, with the traumatic memory, and these channels
Mhm.
hold thoughts, images, memories, emotions, and sensations.
Mhm.
So once we get two positive reports, we go back to the target memory. We do that process again until we have no more negative reports.
Wow.
And once we do that, we assess the level of distress. Once it's a zero, we move on to install the positive cognition. So, what the client wants
Mhm.
to believe about themselves, I
Mhm.
am worthy, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And then we continue the process.
Mm.
And then we do a body scan to check any sensations in the body. And once those are clear, again with the dual attention or the bilateral stimulation, once those are clear, the memories reprocess. We're done.
Wow.
Mhm.
So this, what you just described, does that all happen in one session or is that multiple sessions?
So typically, it can happen in one session, depending on the reprocessing rate.
Right.
Sometimes the memory um, is so disturbing, or it's more traumatic to that person, so it can take time to get through
Mm-hmm.
all the channels. So if
Mm-hmm.
that's the case, we stop the session, like we stop the reprocessing. We put any negative thoughts, images, etc., into the container
Mm-hmm.
for next time. And then next time we just start where we left off.
Oh, okay, nice. Is
Yeah.
there, I guess, I mean, one, you can hear how excited you get
Yeah.
over this
Yeah.
modality.
Yeah.
Like you really love it, which
Yeah.
is
I do.
awesome.
I do.
It's so amazing. And you can, like, I can see and hear that passion in you. And so I'm
Yeah.
sure clients do too, kind of your excitement to help them through that process.
Yeah.
But with what you described, you mentioned, like, after that, the memory has been reprocessed and you're done. Does that mean
Mhm.
you're done with therapy? Or do you kind of go back into some talk therapy and then maybe from there, have another EMDR session? Like, what is that kind of, I
Yeah.
guess
What's
it
the
probably
process?
varies also.
Yeah.
Also.
So when I say that you're done, meaning that memory is reprocessed, you're no
Yeah.
longer going to experience the negative effects of that memory. But remember, the memory that we grabbed it from a
Hmm.
target of memories in that
Right.
memory network.
Hmm.
So the next session is picking another memory in that target.
Right.
And then we keep reprocessing those memories in the same target until they're all cleared out. And then we move on to the next group or target of
Hmm.
memories.
Okay.
So yeah, so it can be quite a lengthy process to
Hmm.
reprocess all the memories. Um, and that's why when you start EMDR, you can't just quit. You can't just be like, I don't want to do this anymore. You
Right.
really need to get through at least the reprocessing of the memory that you're in, if
Hmm.
not the group or like the target.
Okay. Okay. That's all very interesting, like the bilaterals. And also, I mean, in the name EMDR, it's eye movement. So I
Mhm.
guess, there's so many different ways. And I think we've seen some of it in media. I remember a Grey's Anatomy episode where they had
Mm,
kind of like
the
this
light.
bar of lights and
Yeah.
the lights are going back and forth. So your eyes are following it. You gave
Yeah.
the example of the tapping. You mentioned buzz, like little,
Fuzzies.
like
Yeah.
buzzies. And I know, back when I was just kind of starting my like social work degree, I knew somebody who did EMDR by putting these little vibrating clips on
Mm.
clients' ears. And so there's so many different ways, but why eye movement, I guess? Like, what's the science behind it?
Hmm. So, so the woman that discovered EMDR, she discovered it because she was walking somewhere and her eyes were kind of darting back and forth, and she was thinking about something traumatic, and then I guess noticed that it wasn't bothering her anymore.
Oh, wow.
So that, I think that's why it started with the eye
The eye
movement.
movement. Hmm.
Um, so the science behind it, I actually Googled this because maybe we weren't told in training, or maybe I just forget.
Yeah.
But it's really cool because so the bilateral stimulation, it mimics REM sleep simulation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this is where emotional memories are naturally consolidated and integrated. And some researchers suggest that it mimics the brain's overnight processing, helping to shift memories from raw sensory emotional storage in the amygdala to
Hmm.
more adaptive narrative storage in the prefrontal cortex, like I talked about before.
Yeah.
The other thing is that neuroimaging studies show reduced activation in the amygdala, which is like your fight or flight, your fear center during
Hmm.
EMDR. At the same time, prefrontal areas linked to rational regulation and hippocampal areas linked to contextual memory become more active.
Okay.
Yeah. So the bilateral stimulation is activating different parts of your brain to get it
Hmm.
out of that fear, get it out of the amygdala and into the prefrontal cortex.
Yeah. For folks who maybe don't know the amygdala and prefrontal
Prefrontal
cortex,
cortex. Yeah.
what part of our emotions, what part of our thoughts and everything are kind of tied into those parts of our brain?
Yeah. So I'll try to keep this brief, but so the polyvagal theory, right? So
Yeah.
we have the ventral vagal, the dorsal vagal, and something else that I don't remember. But if we think about like fight or flight, this is your amygdala,
Hmm.
right? Like so the amygdala senses fear or lack of safety, etc. And um and so that's why so these traumatic memories are stored in the amygdala. So if something happens that your amygdala discerns as fearful or lack of safety because you have a traumatic event that happened, so you're triggered, then
Hmm.
you're going to experience like hyperarousal, fight or flight, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
When the memories are encoded into the prefrontal cortex, I'm not exactly sure what this part of the brain does, but it sounds like
It's like the
it's
thinking
more,
and
yeah,
regulation center. Yeah.
like more of the rational part of the brain.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like our amygdala is emotion center, kind of everything that you mentioned, right? It does
Hmm.
emotional processing, especially like fear, threat detection, all of those like trauma responses, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn that you mentioned. And then the prefrontal cortex is more of the rationale, like you said, thinking,
Hmm.
regulation center. It's located here at the front part of our brain. And that's where our high order thinking is, or reasoning, planning, problem solving. And yeah, it helps regulate some of those impulses and emotional responses that we may have. So that's kind of what you're talking about, moving things from the amygdala over to the prefrontal cortex, where we're able to have a little bit more of that rational mind, kind of
Hmm.
using more of our rational mind.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So who can benefit from EMDR? I know you mentioned a lot about like trauma and when you maybe don't, um, maybe that there was a traumatic incident, but you don't really remember it fully, or it's really impacting your livelihood, like,
Hmm.
kind of living your life day to day. On top of that, like who else can benefit from EMDR?
So EMDR is really about disturbing memories. So like some folks have come and requested EMDR or are looking for EMDR, but they don't have distressing memories. They just have distressing feelings about
Mm-hmm.
something that happened or a family member, et cetera, et cetera. We can't reprocess feelings. We can't reprocess core beliefs, things like
Right.
that. We just reprocess the distressing memory that you have related to an event.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, um, anybody that has a distressing memory that wants it to not be distressing anymore would be a good candidate for EMDR.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there are core beliefs behind those memories that need to be worked through because it's actually the core belief that is causing the distress rather than the memory itself.
Right.
Yeah. So
Okay.
and that so we do a little bit of talk therapy um, to discern what the client needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people say, "Well, I don't have any disturbing memories," and I say, "Okay," and then I give them the list to do at home, and then they come back with 25 of them. So yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes it's the guidance piece. We need the
Yeah.
guidance of like, what
Yeah.
exactly are we looking for?
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
it sounds like talk therapy and EMDR then are used kind of together for
Yes.
the client. So that's really important as well. What would you say is the biggest myth about EMDR that maybe you want this opportunity to clear up? Because I know sometimes, people can talk about EMDR kind of like it's a woo-woo kind of thing.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
like how does moving my eyes actually going to impact anything? And so a lot of people can have this myth that it's not, maybe as I
Like
don't know,
effective.
beneficial or effective or,
Yeah.
has that evidence-based research behind it. And so, yeah, any other myths that you want to clear up?
Um, I just want to address the woo woo thing for a second because a few of
Yeah.
my, like a lot of clients who have only had talk therapy, and I'm like, hey, do you want to try this really weirdo woo woo thing that I don't think is weird or woo woo?
Yeah.
So they sometimes feel a bit anxious because they don't know what to expect. So I spend a lot of
Mm,
time like kind of explaining to them this is what's going to happen, this is what you're going to experience, etc. Um, the other thing that folks don't realize is that I don't need to know your story. If you want to
yeah.
tell me your story, I would love to hear your story, but you don't have to tell me exactly what happened to you.
Mm,
It's just you're just telling me a memory. So for example, I was bullied in middle school.
mhm.
Maybe you were bullied and these people beat you up and you were on the ground and you had to go to the hospital. Da da da. You don't need to tell me that.
Mm,
I was bullied in middle school. So there's no if you don't have to rehash everything that happened to you in order for
mhm,
EMDR to be effective.
mm.
And I think that that's what a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the distinction for me between EMDR and talk therapy, because
Mhm.
with talk therapy, even to reprocess trauma, you have to tell the trauma. You have to talk about the
Yes.
trauma. You have to talk about what happened, sometimes in great detail, which
Yeah.
can be really traumatizing.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes a lot of time before you even get to tell the story
That's right.
because you're creating the safety networks, the emotional, like the
That's right.
tools, the coping strategies, all of that. So you're
Exactly.
able to access or share that story. So, yes, in terms of duration, talk therapy session that can take a lot longer. Whereas it sounds like for EMDR, you just bring up the memory
Yeah.
and then the reprocessing can happen just from that.
That's right. Yeah.
That's really
And
cool. Yeah.
it is really cool. And that's not to say that emotions don't come up during reprocessing, but
Hmm.
that's why we have the container for you to put the
Hmm.
emotions in. I also make myself available outside of session. Like folks can email me if they're in distress
Yeah.
and feel like they need to have like a 5 or 10 minute conversation. Like I recognize that we're dealing with, very traumatic and intense things.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, but we've built tools beforehand to make sure that the client has the tools that they need if they're feeling emotionally dysregulated in between sessions.
Yeah, I mean, you already kind of talked to this about having that container and being available after session because you're aware of how,
Mhm.
triggering and impactful this can be for people. But how do you make clients feel safe during the process? Like, again, there can be some maybe discomfort. It's a new therapy. It can
Mhm.
feel like quote unquote
Mhm.
silly for
Mhm.
people to kind of have to be doing the tapping or doing the eye movements or whatever it could be. So, what are things that you do, you yourself, not just all
Mhm.
therapists, but what are things that Sarah does to
Mhm.
help clients feel safe during that process?
Maybe this is just me, but I feel like it's quite easy for clients to connect with me, like early
Yeah.
on in our work together.
You're
Um,
great at building that rapport with
yeah,
clients for sure.
thank
Yeah.
you. So having that relationship and that level of comfort and safety in the therapy room
Mm,
really helps support clients in this work.
mm,
Oftentimes when we start reprocessing the first memory, there's like a bit of like, oh, I don't know, or like kind of laughing, or am I allowed to talk? And I'm just like, yep, just go with
yeah.
that. Like it's okay. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what to expect. That's not a big deal, right? So
Yeah.
just creating that calm, steady presence
Hmm.
that, clients know that they are safe with me and they can trust me and rely on me. And then eventually like we get into it and then it's fine. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, I'm curious, what changes do clients typically notice first?
So the immediate thing is feeling tired. So reprocessing,
Yeah.
you can feel very tired. It's recommended that you rest after the session.
Mm.
Um, and so I've heard from several people that, so for example, one client drove past an area where they experienced a traumatic event and they mentioned like, oh, this doesn't even bother me anymore.
Oh.
Nothing's coming up for me. I don't feel anything. Another client engaged with a person who they had a traumatic incident with, and the same thing. Like, there's nothing, I don't feel anything anymore. I feel fine.
Mm.
So that's usually what I feel. That's usually what I hear after like a one reprocessing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like so much already
Yeah.
happens after the one.
Yeah.
Obviously, we talked about how this can be really beneficial for trauma, PTSD, CPTSD. Is there any other benefits beyond trauma healing that EMDR can have for folks?
That's a good question. So, like, in thinking about that question, like, what I go back to is that, and I guess this is just related to trauma healing, but that folks who, like, you're no longer living a life that disturbs you. You're no
Mm.
longer like limited by the effects of the trauma that you were experiencing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you couldn't work and now you can. Maybe you couldn't get into a relationship and now you can. Maybe you were having nightmares or flashbacks and now you're not. Right. So I kind of look at it more from like a broader holistic perspective that yes, we're reprocessing these memories, but it's also impacting your life in really positive ways
Mm.
as well.
Yeah. How can someone know if EMDR is right for them? There's so many modalities and types
Mm-hmm.
of therapies out now.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, yeah, how would people know if EMDR is right for them?
So I think if folks have experienced traumatic events,
Mm-hmm.
they have traumatic memories that are impacting their lives in negative ways. And that can look like many different things: emotional
Mm-hmm.
dysregulation, panic, like constant fight or flight, people pleasing,
Yeah.
etc. And they are looking for a modality that works well, and works quickly. EMDR would be right for them.
Mm-hmm. That's very helpful for those that may be interested in therapy and in looking at different modalities. So now kind of, you already gave a suggestion in terms of if you're looking for an EMDR therapist and
Mm.
kind of starting that dissociation assessment.
Mm-hmm.
But what else should listeners maybe look for when they're choosing an EMDR therapist?
I think someone who, I mean, is well versed in like understanding how trauma can impact the body. I think especially from like a nervous system place, emotional dysregulation. Um, I feel like I had a client earlier this week who commented that she had EMDR, but I don't know that there was any prep work done beforehand.
Mm,
So just a therapist who is going through like all those steps that I initially spoke about,
yeah.
like doing the history taking, preparing the client, ensuring their safety, stability. Um, yeah, and like somebody that you feel comfortable with, somebody that you click with, right? And I feel
Mm,
like that's with any like therapist,
yeah.
right? Like you want
Finding
to
a good fit.
feel that's right, especially because I think that when you're sharing traumatic events, you're very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make sure that you're with somebody that you trust, that you feel safe with, that you feel safe going to if you're experiencing suicidal ideation or any other like problematic or threatening emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's, I guess that's my
Yeah.
little rundown there. Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully there's an opportunity to have like you know, um a discovery call or a consultation so that you
Absolutely.
can ask these questions of the EMDR therapist to make sure
Mhm.
that it's a good fit for you.
Yeah.
And some places where people can find EMDR therapists is like Emdria website,
Hmm.
but also just doing a quick Google search of EMDR
Hmm.
therapist near me can sometimes be really helpful if that's
Hmm.
something that you're looking for. Now that we're kind of coming to the end of this episode, what's one thing that you wish everyone knew about EMDR therapy?
That it's not, that it's not woo woo. I think that it's not woo woo and that it actually works. And
Yeah.
I I think even when I was doing my training, I was like, I don't really understand how this is going to work, right? Like I was
Hmm.
even a little bit skeptical, but I'm like, no, I want to go through with this because I had been hearing about how effective it is and like it's like the new like buzzword or whatever.
Yeah.
But actually experiencing it for myself with clients, I'm like, this is crazy. Like this is
Hmm.
crazy. Like just the way that it works
Hmm.
and that it works so quickly and that people can be free from
Yeah.
the effects of trauma like after a session. To me, I'm just like, this is mind blowing.
Hmm. And
So
you had to kind of be on the client side when you were doing the training. Is that right? Like, did
I
you get
did,
to
yeah.
experience? Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we weren't allowed to use any like hugely traumatic
Of course, yeah.
memories during training. But even, doing that and doing the tapping, so the bilateral stimulation, I felt different in my body, right?
Hmm.
Like there's a sense of like peace and calm that came over me when I was doing the bilateral stimulation.
Hmm.
So even something simple was noticeable for me.
Yeah, yeah. And I like the bilateral stimulation outside of EMDR can be really helpful. I talk to clients about the butterfly tapping,
Yes.
when
Yep.
just to like help ground them. And so, yeah, to kind of put
Yep.
that in a full therapy with all of the steps and all of the processes that you obviously have to do when you are doing EMDR therapy, like the bilateral stimulation can be really helpful, calming and
Hmm.
soothing. And so that's
Hmm.
really cool though that EMDR therapists actually get to experience from like a client's perspective what that
Hmm.
process is like for them. And
Hmm.
then again, your face lit up. You were so excited when you were talking
Yeah.
about how crazy it was when you actually practiced
Yeah.
it with
Yeah.
clients and seeing that quick change that can happen.
Yeah.
So that is amazing. And Sarah, just for folks, in case they're curious, are you currently accepting new clients at New Moon?
Yes. I'm always accepting new clients. Yes, I'm accepting new clients. Yeah, for EMDR therapy or talk therapy, whatever they're looking for.
And you have a
Yeah.
free workshop coming up too.
I do. Yeah, I do
Yeah.
on
Do you want to
October
tell folks
16th.
about that?
Yeah, so it's a trauma focused workshop. So the title is Why Am I Like This? And it's kind
Mhm.
of geared towards folks who, might be feeling emotionally dysregulated or not really understanding why they're behaving in ways that they do. Maybe they're stuck in like patterns in their lives. So this workshop focuses on how trauma and the nervous system, attachment triggers,
Mm,
and then some central nervous system healing as well. So
that's amazing.
yeah,
And sorry,
I'm really
when
excited.
did you say it was?
October 16th at 7 o'clock virtually, and it's free. So everybody should come
Yeah,
because
we
it's
will
free.
definitely put the link on there. It's free and it's a good way to kind of just check in, learn some new things, get to meet you and be in that safe environment with folks while you're just, learning a little bit about yourself with
Hmm.
that. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's
Absolutely.
really cool. We will put the link in our show notes, but is there anywhere else where people can find you if they're looking to follow?
They can find me on Instagram. My handle is at Sarah underscore Moore underscore RSW. Yeah, it's a great page. Come and check
Yeah.
it out.
Is there anything else you want or you think is important for folks to know before we say our goodbyes?
No, I think the only thing is that it's normal or common to feel anxious about
Mm,
trying something new.
yeah.
But if you've been thinking about EMDR, you could at least book a consult with someone who practices EMDR just to talk about it, talk about any anxieties that you have, talk about how it might be helpful for you.
Hmm.
Um, because I think you'll be really surprised at how effective it is. And like the biggest thing for me is that clients can be free. They can be
Mm,
free from the negative impacts that trauma has had on them for their whole lives. And I think that's why I love it so much, because I know what it's like to struggle with, you know, traumatic events or events that have happened and how it impacts us in negative ways.
yeah.
So to be able to support someone in that, it's such a gift,
Hmm.
right? And so, yeah, I would just say if you're curious, do a little bit of research or have a consult with somebody and, see how it could change your life in positive ways.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
completely normal to feel nerves
Yeah.
beforehand. That's why the consults can be so helpful.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
yes, so much privilege in the work that we get to do with
Yeah.
clients. So
It is. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. This was so
Thanks for having me.
informative. Of course, make sure to follow Sarah. Check out the workshop that she has coming up on October 16th. And next week, we will be talking to Rhonda, who will be talking to us a little bit about this pressure we get from society about bouncing back after pregnancy. So make sure to tune into that one for next week. But Sarah, thank you so much again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Outside the Therapy Room. This podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you reside in Ontario and are interested in working with one of our therapists, please visit our website in the show notes. If you reside outside of Ontario, a quick Google search or search through Psychology Today will help you find a therapist near you.